How's it going, my friends? My name is Gary and this is my channel Weakest of Weeks. If you're a first-time viewer, I appreciate you clicking on the video and definitely consider subscribing. Today we are going to be fixing this 2011 Jeep Compass. Now this particular repair will work on the same platform from the years 2007 to 2017. That applies to the Jeep Compass as well as the Jeep Patriot. This may also apply to the Dodge Caliper, the Dodge Avenger, and potentially the Dodge Journey. So the years and everything, I'll put that in the description to be a little more specific, but without going into too much detail, it's having a hard starting issue. It's coming up with a specific check engine light code associated to it, and there's a couple other things going on. So let's go ahead and get started. For starters, we're going to be working on the 2.4 liter four-cylinder dual overhead cam variable valve timing engine found on multiple vehicles throughout this platform, like I mentioned at the beginning. What's happening is these vehicles are only getting older, they're only getting more miles, you find them all over the place. I mean, heck, just outside there is another one sitting on the road. So you can find these all over the place, and realistically, if the vehicle hasn't had this repair done to it, more than likely this sensor is gonna fail at some point in its life. And what I'm talking about is this sensor right here, which is buried way down in the back, and I'll show you how to replace here in a second. But this is the crankshaft position sensor. The vehicle here, it's having a hard start or a no start condition, or even sometimes it's shutting off while driving. What is happening is the vehicle, when it gets up to operating temperature, something internally in this sensor fails, and I believe it to cut off all ignition. So while you're driving, it actually shuts off. Sometimes it can start back immediately. Sometimes it just sits there and it cranks and cranks. So you turn the key and it sounds like it's trying to start, but because it's not getting any spark, it's not starting. You let the vehicle sit for some time, it cools down, and then it'll fire right back up. Probably 9 times out of 10, if you have a crankshaft position sensor issue and you're having those symptoms, you'll also have a check engine light in conjunction with this failed sensor to let you know that this is in fact the issue. Here is my super high dollar, very expensive, totally unobtainable Maxi Scan scanner. I'm actually just kidding. This I purchased off Amazon many years ago, and it's something that's definitely amazing to have laying around in your glove box for moments like this. So go ahead and have the key in the ignition turn to the on position. Very simple. It does its little thing. Read the codes here. Catalytic efficiency below threshold. That is nothing in relation to the performance of the vehicle. Yes, it could be a catalytic converter issue, maybe a O2 sensor, but realistically, this is probably a exhaust leak. But more importantly, what we're getting to today, right here, this P0335 code, crankshaft position sensor A. Don't worry if it's A or B, this only has one crankshaft sensor on it. So this is the code that we already kind of knew based on the symptoms, but it just verifies that there is in fact a crankshaft position sensor issue. To give you a better idea where this crankshaft position sensor is located, let's go ahead and pull off this plastic cover, and it's just held on with pressure, so we just pull it upwards. Not gracefully, but that's how it comes off. So the main point of focus is behind the engine all the way down here underneath this exhaust manifold, and somewhere in this void here. Pretty much you follow this pigtail down and chase it down to where it goes to the engine block. There is a small metal heat shield that is sort of in the way. Don't be afraid to bend that out of the way temporarily to gain you access to it. There's one pigtail we need to remove along with one bolt. We'll then be able to wiggle the sensor out, pull it out, and then replace it with a new one. And a point I mentioned, this is a two-wheel drive model, so this void is rather open and gives you more access than it would an all-wheel drive model. The last 2 times I did a crank position sensor on one of these Compasses was an all-wheel drive model, and it was a bit more involving. You don't necessarily have the luxury of just reaching over the exhaust manifold like you would on this two-wheel drive model, but it's really not that much more difficult. It is more involving. You remove this air duct to the air box, loosen up this coupler. I tend to leave the ECU here, the engine computer. However, what I end up doing is removing the bolts for the upper airbox lid, removing this clamp here, and draping this over so you don't disconnect this kind of stuff here. It's definitely always a good idea to disconnect the battery, and especially if you're gonna be disconnecting these connectors into the computer. But once you remove this airbox, you can kind of attack it from the side and get your hand in that way. So it's more from the side in an all-wheel drive model, but the two-wheel drive model like this, it's more over the exhaust manifold. Might be hard to see, but there is actually a tab on the connector somewhere more towards the exhaust side, and you just push it in like that and pull on the end of it, and it releases the pigtail. Next up, we have a 10mm bolt we need to undo. Good. Going blindly here. Hopefully I'm undoing the right bolt. Oops. Have the old, gross, cruddy one out. Now nothing is striking as far as external defects with this one. Yes, it's all gross and oily and such. It definitely has some miles on it, but nothing external is screaming out that it's defective. Anything wrong with it is all internal. You can definitely get a leaky O-ring on this thing and it spit oil out. Quite frankly, this engine has plenty other oil leaks, and I don't think this is one of them. It's just it's defective internally. Now, if you're looking at a replacement like I am right here, don't go and waste your time with the Auto Domes, the OK Autos, the O'Reillys. Go with the saying Mopar or no car. Go with the original equipment manufacturer, the OEMs on this, unless you love doing this painful job and you want to do it within the next year. Ask me how I know. Spend a couple more bucks on the factory version and save yourself a lot of headaches in the future. I mean, these sensors are cheap to begin with, so only spending an additional $5 or $10 on the OEM version is well worth the investment. Got the new factory brand sensor. Have a little oil on the O-ring. We're ready for reinstallation. 10mm bolt. Try to hand thread this on. Okay, you have to have this pigtail oriented a certain way. The tab right here to release it, that is more towards the catalytic converter side of the exhaust. Make sure you tug on the wire here, make sure the pigtail is clipped into place and it's not going to vibrate out. Now that we know that's all good and secure, we're good to push back this metal heat shield. And one of the final steps is this wire right here, which is actually the pigtail just connected to the crank position sensor. Well, it's got this clip on it, and just make sure that is clipped into the thin metal heat shield here. Here we go. Because I took off this air duct, we're good to refasten that. Very simple. Goes into place inside the airbox. You have the two tabs you twist. And lastly, the engine cover. Couple tabs that stick up. And there it is. Outside of closing the hood, the final step is going to be clearing the code. Now, if you had the battery unhooked for an extended period of time, the code would have cleared by itself. We'll erase them. Okay, we'll start the vehicle. Check engine light is off. And it fired right up, which was something that it didn't do before. So that is going to wrap it up on today's video of changing the crankshaft position sensor in this 2011 Jeep Compass. Hopefully this video helped you out in changing this sensor in your 2007 to 2017 Jeep Compass or Jeep Patriot. If it's one of those two models, it's going to be a near identical replacement. But if it's anything under the Fiat Chrysler umbrella, meaning if it's a Dodge Caliper or a Dodge Avenger, potentially the Dodge Journey, it should be a very similar process. So for this vehicle, there's more work to be had. There's oil leaks, it needs an oil change, definitely needs a tune-up in a motor mount. But outside of that, as far as the crankshaft position sensor today, it is done and dusted, replaced, and the vehicle is running like it should, and it no longer stalls out or has hard starting. So if this video helped you out, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing because I have plenty other how-to stuff out there, even Jeep Compass stuff and Jeep Patriot stuff. But with that being said, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you friends next time.